Hello, fourth grade, and welcome to lesson 5-4. We're going to talk about remainders today and how to interpret or understand remainders. Now, remainders are things that you get when you have extras left over and it's not enough to go into equal groups. So when you're dividing and you have a couple extra that aren't enough to share with everybody, those are called your remainders. So if, for example, you had 15 cookies that you wanted to share with 4 friends, you can't give everybody the same, you can give everybody the same amount, but you're going to have a couple extra left over. So if you had those 15 cookies and you want to share them with 4 friends, the closest you could get is giving each friend two cookies. So if you give each friend 2 cookies, each friend is going to have 8. But if you try to give another one to each friend, you're not going to have enough to give all 4 of your friends. So what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a remainder or extras left over that you can't share equally. Let's go ahead and take a look at our short video lesson, and then we'll be able to take a look at our notes and guided practice to learn more about remainders.
When you divide, what do you do with the number that is left over? When you divide, any number that remains after the division is complete is called the remainder. The remainder must be less than the divisor. For example, Ned has 27 soccer cards in an album. He can put 6 cards on each page. He knows that 27 divided by 6 equals 4, with 3 left over as the remainder. Use an R to write a remainder. 27 divided by 6 equals 4 remainder 3. What should Ned do with the remainder? Let's look at some questions to show what to do with the remainder. How many pages can Ned fill? To answer this question, find how many groups of 6 there are. The remainder can be ignored. Use counters to show the total number of cards. Divide the counters into equal groups. Make equal groups with 6 counters in each group. Why do you put 6 counters in each group? You put 6 counters in each group because the album pages will hold 6 cards. 27 divided by 6 equals 4 with 3 left over. Ned can fill 4 pages. The remainder can be ignored. Let's look at another question. How many pages will Ned work on? To answer this question, find out how many groups are filled or started. Add 1 to the quotient without the remainder. We already know the quotient is 4 with a remainder of 3. So the answer is 4 plus 1 equals 5. Ned will work on 5 pages. Let's answer one more question. How many cards will Ned put on the 5th page?
Select your answer.
So here what they're asking you is how many leftover ones do you have? So that last page is not going to be filled up, but we still need a last page to put those last 3 cards. We're not going to throw the cards away. So even though that last page is not going to be filled up, we still need it in order to place the last of our cards. So we can see that on the last page, there are going to be 3 cards.
The answer to this question is the remainder. The remainder is 3. Ned will put 3 cards on the 5th page. How can you multiply to check your answer? To check your answer, multiply 4 times 6. Then add the 3 left over. 4 times 6 equals 24. 24 plus 3 equals 27. You've learned what to do with the remainder when you divide.
All right, let's go back and get into our notes and some examples that we'll work through together. So when we're working on interpreting remainders, first you need to understand that remainder, what is the number you get when you divide whole numbers and a group is left over that isn't enough to share equally into those other groups. So I'll give you another example. Now I have 13 paper clips here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I have 13 paper clips and I want to divide them into 3 equal groups. And I'm not sure how much that's going to be. I'm going to start my groups and just put 1 in each group at a time. So here's my 3 groups, and then I'll keep adding 1 to each group until I don't have enough. So I'll have 13 and I'm dividing it into 3 equal groups. So far, each one of my groups has 3 in it. And these are how much I have left over, so I'm still working with. So if I have 13 divided by 3, can I say 13 divided by 3 is 3 with a remainder of 4? Now, the reason the answer to this question is no, is that I still have enough to put into each group. There's more over here than there are groups that I have, so I'm not done yet. I can add another one to each group before I don't have enough to go in each group. So what I can do now is I can say that 13 divided by 3 is equal to 4 with 1 more left over. And I can check my work by saying 4 times 3 is 12, plus the 1 more is equal to 13. If I got back to my original number, then I know that my work is correct. Now, the same process works if I wanted to divide into 5 groups. So if I want to divide 13 by 5, I'll make 5 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So here's my 5 groups, and I'll add to each group until I run out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, how many do I have left over up here? Over here, I can see that I only have 3 left over. That's not enough to put 1 in each group. So if I did 13 divided by 5, I can say that 13 divided by 5 is going to equal 2 with 3 left over. Now, if I want to stop and check my work, I'm going to do 5 times 2 plus those 3 that are left over to see if I get back to my answer or my original number of 13. So I know 5 times 2 is 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 10 plus 3 more is 13. So I know that I did my work correctly. Now remember, if I had only put 1 in each group and I had 8 of these left over, if your remainder is greater than the number of groups you're dividing into, you're not done dividing. That means you can still keep going. So that's why we know that your remainder can never be greater than your divisor. Let's go ahead and get into our notes for this section. So we said that the remainder is what we get when we're dividing whole numbers and we have some left over that are not enough to break into those equal groups. It's not enough to give to each number or to each group evenly. An example that we have, and I annotated it for you so that you guys could see, is Akram has 28 model cars to share with 5 of his friends. How many cars will each friend get? How many are left over? So when we're talking about something being left over, that's when we're talking about a remainder. So first we need to find out how many groups of 5 there are in 28, and we're going to ignore the remainder for now. So skip count by 5s to get as close as you can to 28 without passing it. Now we know 5 times 5 is 25 and 5 times 6 is 30. So I can't go up to 5 times 6 because that's more than what I have. I have to stay at my total or under my total. The closest I can get to 28 is 25. So 28 divided by 5 is going to give me 5 with 3 left over. And the way I check my work is I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to do 5 times 5 is 25 plus 3 is going to get me back to that 28. Now, when I'm writing remainders, I use the letter R, a capital R, to show that that is the number that's left over. So 28 divided by 5 equals 5, remainder 3. So Akram can give each of his friends 5 cars, and he'll have 3 remaining cars or 3 extra cars left over. And again, remember, your remainder will always be less than your divisor, because the divisor tells you how many are in each group that you're making. So if you have more left over than the number of groups, that means you're not done dividing yet. You can put more into each one of those groups before moving on and deciding what number is your remainder. Now let's take a look at our guided practice together. Can your remainder be greater than your divisor? And again, here the answer is no, because the remainder shows the number that is not enough to make another equal group, or not enough to go into each one of the equal groups that you already have. So if the remainder is greater than the divisor, that means you are still able to make more equal groups, or you're still able to add to each one of your groups. Now, an example that I gave you here, I said 17 divided by 4 is not equal to 3 remainder 5. This is an inequality because 5 is greater than my divisor over here. Since 5 is greater than the 4, that means I can make another group of 4. There's more than a group of 4 right here. And since I'm breaking it into groups of 4, I can make another group of 4. Since 4 times 3 is 12, we still have a little ways to go. We can still add another group of 4 and still be less than 17, because 4 times 4 is 16. So 17 divided by 4 is going to give me an answer of 4 with 1 left over. So we can model this again with our paper clips. So this is 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So if I have 17 paper clips and I want to split them into 4 equal groups, I'm going to start making my groups. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's my 4 groups. Now I'm going to keep adding paper clips to these groups until I don't have enough to share equally. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I did in my first part of my example, where I told you that answer isn't correct, is I can't say that 17 divided by 4 is equal to 3 with the remainder of 5. Because if my groups here are 4 equal groups and I have more than 4 remainders, that means I'm not done. I can still add another one to these groups and still have enough to share and end up with a smaller remainder. So I can say 17 divided by 4 is equal to 4 with a remainder of 1. And I can double check that by working backwards and multiplying. 4 times 4 is 16, plus that 1 more gets me back to my answer of 17. Let's take a look at our next guided practice question. For number 2, it says Dave is packing 23 sweaters into boxes. Each box will hold 3 sweaters. How many boxes will be needed? And then it says, explain how the remainder affects your answer. So 3 times a number is close to 23. So we have to figure out what 23 divided by 3 is. Now I know the closest I can get is 3 times 7, which gives me 21. So 23 divided by 3 is going to be 7 with a remainder of 2, right? Because we got to 21 plus those 2 more make 23. But we need to put all of the sweaters in a box. So he's not only going to need 7 boxes, he's going to need an 8th box, even though that box is not going to be full. It's not going to have 3 sweaters in it. It's only going to have 2 sweaters in it because that's the remainder. He's still going to need 8 boxes to pack all of those sweaters. So the remainder impacts our answer because it forces us to have another box because all of the sweaters need to go into a box. Now for the bottom part, for numbers 3 to 6, you're going to be working on solving and finding the remainder. Now, what I did on the side in pink for you here is I wrote down the related multiplication fact that got me as close as possible to that number without passing it. So to find 47 divided by 3, I had to stop and think 3 times what will get me close to 47 without passing it. So 15 times 3 gets me to 45. That's as close as I can get to 47 without passing it, because then my next number would be 48 and I can't go that far. So 47 divided by 3 is going to equal 15 with the remainder of 2, because remember 15 times 3 is 45. 45 is 2 away from 47. For number 4, 29 divided by 2 is equal to a number. So I know 14 times 2 is going to give me 28. So 29 divided by 2 is going to be 14 with the remainder of 1. So that's 28 plus 1 is going to give me that 29, which is my whole number. For number 5, we have 62 divided by 5. I need to see how close I can get to 62, skip counting by 5s without passing 62. And the closest I can get is 12 times 5, which gives me 60. So my answer over here is 62 divided by 5 is going to be 12 with the remainder of 2. Now notice every single one of my remainders is smaller than my divisor. It has to be, because if my remainder is bigger than my divisor, that means I'm not done dividing yet. I can still add another equal group. And the last one, 86 divided by 6. So I had to think 6 times what number gets me close to 86 without passing it. 14 times 6 gets me to 84. And 84 is 2 away from 6. So my answer to 86 divided by 6 is going to be 14 with 2 left over. So my remainder is 2. That's it for this lesson. Remember, your remainder always has to be smaller than your divisor. It's okay if you're working with a number and you end up with extra left over. That's what we call remainders. If there's a question similar to this one where it's telling you that you need all of those parts sorted, or how many pages will you need to put all of the cards, even if they don't fill up the whole page, or how many boxes do you need to put all of the sweaters, even though that last box is not filled, remember that remainder is going to add 1 more to your answer. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, 4th grade. Bye-bye.